When my childhood rival broke her leg, my boyfriend didn't just comfort her. He forced me to take off my prosthetic and perform a clown dance to make her laugh. The friction tore my stump open, and the infection was so painful I nearly black out. But he just shielded her eyes as if my mangled limb was an eyesore, letting his friends dismantle my prosthetic while they cheered. Before I lost consciousness, I heard his voice, soft and tender as he cooed to her. "It's gross, don't look. It's just a fake leg anyway. She can build a new one whenever she wants. Don't feel guilty." When I woke up in the hospital, I looked at my prosthetic, a ruin for the 99th time. The anger I'd suppressed for years finally boiled over, but then I saw his latest social media post. He had filmed himself throwing the red wedding gown I spent months hand-stitching into a dumpster. His caption read, "Rosalie doesn't like red, so out it goes." At that moment, something inside me died. I picked up my phone and booked a fake death service for 5 days later. I rolled my wheelchair into my studio, only to find my workspace covered in cheap bunny stickers. The high-end prosthetic I'd spent 2 months crafting for a client had been ripped from its display case. Rosalie Shaw was holding it like a toy gun, swinging it around. When she saw me, she pointed the broken limb at me and mimicked a gunshot. Bang! Fury surged through me, my eyes fixed on the damage. Rosalie's eyes immediately welled up with tears, and she fumbled to fix what she'd broken. "I'm so sorry, Sylvia. Jude told me I could play with anything. I didn't know you'd be mad. I'll put it back." She intentionally fumbled, cutting her finger on a sharp edge of the carbon fiber, and collapsing dramatically. Jude Sterling rushed into the room, his face twisted with frantic worry. He held her finger to his lips for a few seconds before screaming at me. "It's just a piece of plastic, Sylvia. If Rosalie wants to play with it, let her. Why do you have to be such a killjoy? Get the first aid kit now. Rosalie has a clotting disorder. If she keeps bleeding, it could be life-threatening." My heart felt like it was being squeezed by cold, rusted pliers. I remembered when I lost my leg in that car accident saving him. He used to stay by my side every night, cleaning my wounds without flinching, promising to never let me be hurt again. Now, I couldn't tell if that was ever love or just a mountain of soul-crushing guilt. Back then, if anyone touched my prosthetic, he would defend me with everything he had. But everything changed when Rosalie came back. Or maybe, he just reverted to the man who always put her first. The client who came to pick up the prosthetic saw the mangled parts on the floor, and the hope in his eyes turned to cold ash. "Miss Knight, is this the masterpiece you promised my daughter?" I tried to force a smile to explain, but Jude cut me off, framing me before I could speak. "Sylvia, just because you lost your own leg, do you have to be so bitter that you destroy someone else's hope? Rosalie tried to stop you and you hurt her. Doesn't your conscience hurt?" Jude looked at me with pure disgust, and the client's expression darkened. I stared at him, unable to breathe, the weight in my chest becoming unbearable. He knew better than anyone how much my work meant to me, yet he threw me under the bus for her. The client, seeing his young daughter's disappointment, exploded in rage. He began grabbing tools and parts, hurling them at me. Jude didn't even look my way. He was already shielding Rosalie, pulling her into his chest. Something sharp hit my forehead. A warm trickle of red began to run down my face. While I bled, Jude was busy whispering sweet reassurances to the woman who had started it all. "Miss Knight, my daughter trusted you because you're a cripple yourself. I see now that you deserve to lose that leg." The client's words were like a jagged blade in my heart, leaving me numb. For the first time, I felt a wave of regret for ever pulling Jude out of that wreckage. Jude eventually knelt down with some gauze, his touch gentle but his words like ice. "Rosalie can't stand the sight of red. As her future sister-in-law, you can handle a little sacrifice. You're stronger than her anyway. Besides, this was just an accident. You survived a literal amputation. You can survive a little scratch." There it was again. Sister-in-law. Because of that title, I had endured endless humiliation for his little sister. I had stayed for him, believing she was just family to him. How wrong I was. I spent the evening peeling the stickers off the ruined parts, wiping them down with shaking hands. Rosalie watched me, her voice trembling with a fake sob. "Sylvia, let me help. I just thought the leg looked boring. If you hate them, I'll take them off." Before she could touch anything, Jude blocked her, his voice full of protective annoyance. "Don't touch that. Let your sister-in-law do it herself. She's the expert. I didn't raise you to do manual labor for others." I froze, a self-deprecating smile twitching on my lips. "I'm fine really," Rosalie chirped, rubbing her hand against Jude's chest. "But Jude, you shouldn't have yelled at her. Now she has to use the wheelchair again. You should make it up to her, or I'll feel so guilty." The way she looked at him was pure, unfiltered lust. Jude's eyes darkened with a sudden heat as he watched her walk away. Only when she was gone did he turn back to me, clearing his throat with a guilty expression. "You know how it is. Rosalie saved my life when we were kids. She's been hurt by guys before, so I have to look out for her. If only." He looked at my stump and his voice trailed off into a whisper. I was numb. Every time she destroyed my work, he used the same excuse. He only remembered I saved his life when he looked at my missing limb. In the beginning, he had gotten into a street race because someone insulted Rosalie. The brakes failed. I didn't even think. I just threw my body in front of his. That was the moment he claimed he fell in love with me. He cried all night when he found out I was an orphan. He promised his parents would be my parents. But he never mentioned that his parents hated me just as much as he was starting to. He carried me home that night, acting like I was a porcelain doll. He even brushed my teeth for me, reminding me of the man I fell for after the accident. That is, until I saw the suggestive texts Rosalie was sending him on his phone. Miss Knight, your order for the memorial urn and the medical records has been finalized. We will proceed with the plan in 5 days. I listened to the coordinator on the phone and gave one final instruction. Make sure the pendant containing my baby's cells is attached to the urn. Only after they confirmed did I feel a sense of peace. An urn? Whose urn? Jude had just stepped out of the shower, looking at me with a flicker of concern. He scanned me for injuries and seeing none, he relaxed. We once had a child. But during the 98th time he let Rosalie ruin my work. She accidentally pushed me down the stairs. That day, I was bleeding out in a hospital bed while Jude was in Rosalie's bed. I couldn't bear to let the remains of my baby go, so I had them preserved in a crystal pendant. Jude leaned in to kiss my neck, still fired up from Rosalie's flirting. As his lips touched my skin, a wave of nausea hit me, and I threw up all over him. He recoiled, a flash of pure disgust crossing his face. Clean yourself up. I have work at the office. I have to go. The next morning, Rosalie sent me a video. It was Jude, tangled in the sheets with her, his face showing a level of ecstasy I had never seen. His voice caught in the recording, dripping with contempt. I never asked her to save me. Every time I see that stump, I feel sick. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even need her to blow off steam. I thought about how he came home to me every night after seeing her. He was always rough, never gentle like he was in the video. And the moment his hand brushed my prosthetic, he would lose all interest and leave me shivering. Sylvia, Jude is such a bad boy, Rosalie's voice memo purred. He left marks all over me. He didn't stop all night. When you guys get married, can you even keep up with him? I hammered my fist against my phantom limb, but the pain wouldn't stop. It radiated through my entire soul. Regret was finally starting to outweigh my old love. Jude returned later that morning, carrying my favorite breakfast sandwiches. Seeing my distress, his face softened into a frown. Is it hurting again? Let me massage it. I didn't think that dance would be this bad. I'll talk to Rosalie, tell her to be less impulsive. Despite his words, the affection in his eyes when he spoke her name was unmistakable. I remained silent, no longer moved by his empty apologies. He took my silence for a tantrum and pulled out a box. I ordered this prosthetic for you. Now you don't have to make your own. Wear it to the engagement party in 3 days. I don't want you in a wheelchair, it's embarrassing. He wasn't worried about my comfort. He was ashamed of me. Let's go to the clinic for a checkup. I don't want any surprises on our big day. I ignored him. Sylvia, I'm trying here. Stop being so difficult. Why can't you be half as understanding as Rosalie? He grabbed my leg, forcing the new prosthetic onto my sensitive skin. The friction was agony. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I tried to push him away, but he didn't even look up. Don't move. Do you really want to be seen with me in a wheelchair? You might not care about your dignity, but I do. The pain drained the color from my world. I slumped against the headboard, gasping. He finally noticed I was hurting, but then his phone rang. It was his family doctor. Master Jude, Miss Rosalie is locked in her room. She's hysterical and calling your name. Please come quickly. Without a second thought, he dropped my leg and grabbed the breakfast he'd bought for me. Go to the hospital yourself. Don't ruin the party in 3 days. I stared at the prosthetic. I didn't even want to take it off. If I could survive this pain, I could survive leaving him. Sylvia, get to your studio now and make a prosthetic finger. Rosalie was so guilty she tried to cut her own hand off. Are you happy now? Stop being a bitch to her, or I'll make you regret it. Jude's voice over the phone was a roar of fury. The man who once cried when I lost my leg was officially dead to me. I agreed. The studio he built for me would be the site of my final act. Rosalie hadn't cut her hand. She was just playing a game to see who mattered more to him. I accepted the bet. Looking at the 3-day countdown on the calendar, I felt a strange sense of calm. I called the fake death service one last time. Hello, do you offer a live streaming service? I want the whole event broadcasted at the party. Of course, Miss Knight. We will handle everything according to your instructions. I actually found myself looking forward to my own funeral. That evening, Jude and Rosalie showed up at the studio, impatient and demanding. Why is it taking so long? Rosalie's hand is precious. Work faster. Jude snapped at me like I was a failing servant. I kept my head down and handed over the silicone finger. Rosalie snatched it, insisting on putting it on herself. Jude, let me do it. I don't want you to see me like this. Jude stroked her hair, his voice dripping with honey. I love you no matter what. I could never find you repulsive. He used to say those exact words to me. Now they just made me want to gag. He realized his slip of the tongue and glanced at me. Sylvia, I'll never find you repulsive either. I just gave a cold, stiff nod. Suddenly, Rosalie let out a piercing scream. Red started soaking through her bandages. Sylvia, I know you hate me, but why did you put something sharp inside? It hurts so much. Jude, is my hand ruined forever? She sobbed, her eyes filled with calculated malice. Jude's face turned murderous. I instinctively backed away. He grabbed me, slamming me against the workbench, and violently ripped the prosthetic from my stump. I screamed as the skin was nearly flayed from my body. Sylvia Knight, I've been too patient with you. This pain is your lesson. If Rosalie gets hurt because of you again, I'll make your life a living hell. As he carried her out, I lay on the floor and called an ambulance for myself. Then I called the movers to take every single one of my belongings out of the house. On the day of the engagement, I didn't show up. Jude sent me a barrage of threats. Sylvia, stop playing games. You're a cripple. No one else will ever want you. Get here right now. I watched the screen of my phone with a blank expression. The live stream from the service center had begun. The staff, dressed in black, were slowly walking into the ballroom. The grand ballroom of the Sterling Manor was a sea of champagne silk, glittering, crystal, and the soft, artificial laughter of the city's elite. Jude stood at the center of the room, his arm wrapped tightly around Rosalie's waist. She was wearing a blush pink gown, the exact color she had demanded after, declaring my hand-stitched red dress repulsive and bad luck. Her fingers, wrapped in a neat, white silicone sleeve I had crafted under the threat of violence, rested delicately against his lapel. To the rest of the world, they looked like the perfect couple. But Jude's eyes kept darting to the entrance, his jaw tight, his thumb twitching against his glass. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, his fingers flying across the screen to send me yet another threat. Sylvia, I'm giving you exactly 10 minutes. If you aren't here to apologize to Rosalie in front of my family, I will personally throw every tool in your studio into the river. Don't test my patience. The message remained marked as sent, but never delivered. Suddenly, the heavy double doors of the ballroom swung open. The lively classical music faltered, the violins screeching to a halt as a cold, oppressive silence washed over the room. A procession of 6 people, dressed in immaculate, somber black suits walked slowly into the center of the ballroom. They did not look like guests. They moved with the synchronized, heavy steps of pallbearers. The lead coordinator, a tall man with a pale, expressionless face, carried a large, framed portrait, draped in a thin black veil. Behind him, 2 others carried a pedestal made of dark mahogany, upon which sat a pristine, white marble urn. Around the neck of the urn hung a delicate, silver-chained crystal pendant. Jude froze. The glass in his hand trembled, the champagne sloshing over the rim. What is this? Jude's mother, Eleanor Sterling, stepped forward, her brow furrowed in deep distaste. Who authorized this sick joke? Jude, did you hire some strange performance art for the engagement? Jude didn't answer. His eyes were locked on the silver pendant hanging from the urn. He knew that pendant. 2 years ago, when I was lying in a pool of my own blood at the bottom of the stairs, the doctors had handed me a small, sterile container. It contained the cells of the child we would never get to hold. While Jude was sleeping in Rosalie's bed, listening to her complain about a minor headache, I had taken those cells and paid a craftsman to seal them inside a crystal pendant. I had worn it against my chest every single day. Jude had called it morbid and pathetic. He had told me to throw it away, because the sight of it made Rosalie uncomfortable. The lead coordinator stopped in front of the head table. With a slow, deliberate movement, he lifted the black veil from the portrait. My face stared back at the crowd. It wasn't a professional headshot, nor was it the smiling, vibrant photo from the days before the accident. It was a raw, black and white photo taken in the hospital clinic weeks ago. My skin was translucent, my collarbones protruding, my eyes hollow and entirely devoid of life. It was the face of a woman who was already dead long before her heart stopped beating. What the hell is this? Jude finally found his voice, roaring as he slammed his glass onto the table, shattering the stem. He marched toward the coordinator, his face flushed with a mixture of rage and a strange, creeping panic. Where is Sylvia? Did she pay you to do this? Tell her to stop this ridiculous stunt and get her ass out here right now. Mr. Jude Sterling? The coordinator asked, his voice flat, professional, and entirely unaffected by Jude's fury. Yes. And I want to know who the hell gave you permission to bring this garbage into my family's estate. The coordinator pulled a crisp, white document from his breast pocket and unfolded it. He adjusted his glasses, his voice carrying clearly through the silent, crowded ballroom. We are here on behalf of the Starlight Memorial Services Group, the coordinator read. As of 4:12 a.m. yesterday morning, Miss Sylvia Knight was officially pronounced dead at the St. Jude Memorial Hospital. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Dead. Rosalie's voice squeaked, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked at Jude, her eyes wide with a perfect, practiced terror. Jude, she's lying. Right. Sylvia was fine yesterday. She made me my finger. She was just angry at me. She is lying. Jude screamed, his hands shaking as he reached out to grab the coordinator's lapels. I saw her yesterday. She was fine. She's doing this to ruin my engagement. Where is she? According to the official coroner's report, the coordinator continued, completely ignoring Jude's hands on his coat. The cause of death was systemic septic shock, acute bone marrow infection, and severe untreated necrosis of the residual limb. The autopsy reports that the patient's amputated stump had been subjected to violent, repeated physical trauma, flaying the skin down to the bone and allowing a lethal, drug-resistant bacterial strain to enter the bloodstream. The coordinator looked up, his cold eyes fixing onto Jude. The medical examiner noted that the physical damage to the bone and surrounding tissue was consistent with a heavy, blunt object being forcibly attached to an open wound, and the subsequent violent ripping of said object from the flesh. The guests in the ballroom began to whisper frantically, their eyes darting between Jude and the white marble urn. Oh my God, a prominent business partner murmured from the second row. Untreated necrosis? Physical trauma to her stump? Didn't she lose her leg, saving his life? I heard he forced her to perform some kind of dance for his sister-in-law. Another whispered. The poor girl was practically a slave to them. Jude. Eleanor Sterling's voice was suddenly very thin. She looked at her son, her face pale. Jude, what did you do to her leg? I didn't do anything. Jude shouted, his voice cracking as he backed away from the portrait. The cold panic was finally beginning to claw its way up his throat, choking him. She was fine. I gave her a new prosthetic. I told her to go to the hospital. She's playing a game. She's always playing games to make me feel guilty. Miss Knight anticipated your denial, Mr. Sterling, the coordinator said smoothly. He waved his hand toward the back of the room, where a technician from the memorial service had already connected a laptop to the ballroom's massive projector screen. As per the final legally binding instructions of the deceased, the coordinator announced, and funded entirely by her estate, we are required to broadcast her last testament to all attendees of this gathering. Turn it off. Eleanor Sterling screamed, waving her arms at the staff. Turn that screen off right now. Security, drag these people out. But the security guards didn't move. They had been paid a year's salary in advance by the fake death service, using the funds I had quietly liquidated from my private studio account over the last 3 months. They stood like stone statues blocking the exits. The projector screen flickered to life. The first video that played was not a suicide note. It was a high-definition recording from the security camera in my studio, dated 3 days ago. The screen showed me sitting on the workbench, my face pale, sweat dripping from my forehead as I worked on the silicone finger. Then Jude and Rosalie entered the frame. The audio was crystal clear. Why is it taking so long? Rosalie's hand is precious. Work faster. Jude's voice boomed through the ballroom, sounding incredibly harsh, arrogant, and cruel. The guests watched as Rosalie took the finger, intentionally squeezing her hand, until a tiny drop of blood appeared on the bandage. Sylvia, I know you hate me, but why did you put something sharp inside? It hurt so much. Jude, is my hand ruined forever? The screen showed Rosalie's face, not the tearful, innocent expression she was currently wearing, but a calculated, smirking glance directed straight at the camera while Jude's back was turned. Then came the physical violence. The guests gasped as Jude lunged forward, slamming my fragile, one-legged body against the metal workbench. The sound of my head hitting the steel echoed through the ballroom. And then the horror. The video captured Jude grabbing the carbon fiber prosthetic and violently, brutally ripping it from my stump. On the giant screen, the skin of my residual limb was torn away like wet paper, bright red blood spurting across the floor as I let out a scream so raw, so filled with agony, that several women in the ballroom covered their ears and wept. Sylvia Knight, I've been too patient with you. This pain is your lesson. If Rosalie gets hurt because of you again, I'll make your life a living hell. Jude's recorded voice faded, replaced by the sound of my heavy, ragged breathing, as I lay on the studio floor, clutching my mangled leg in the pool of my own blood while Jude carried Rosalie out of the room without a single backward glance. The silence in the ballroom was absolute. Jude stared at the screen, his mouth open, his eyes bulging. He looked around the room, but every single guest, people he had known his entire life, business Partners he had spent years trying to impress looked at him with a mixture of profound disgust, horror, and utter revulsion. "You monster," the business partner who had been planning to sign a multi-million-dollar contract with the Sterling Group next week whispered, standing up and throwing his napkin onto the table. "You physically abused a disabled woman who lost her leg to save your miserable life? And you did it for her." He pointed a trembling, disgusted finger at Rosalie. No, it's not what it looks like," Rosalie sobbed, her face turning green. As she tried to grab the partner's arm, "She framed us. She set up the camera on purpose. She's a bitch. She wanted to ruin my hand." "Your hand?" the partner sneered, slapping her hand away. "Your hand is perfectly fine. You're a disgusting, manipulative psychopath. And you," he turned his glare to Jude, "are a pathetic excuse for a man." He marched out of the ballroom, and within seconds, a mass exodus began. Dozens of guests stood up, ignoring Eleanor Sterling's desperate pleas, and walked out of the manor, their faces filled with disgust. But the screen wasn't done. The next video played. It was the recording Rosalie had sent me, the one of Jude, tangled in the sheets with her, his face showing a level of ecstasy I had never seen, his voice dripping with contempt. "I never asked her to save me. Every time I see that stump I feel sick. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't even need her to blow off steam." The crowd of remaining guests gasped. Jude's father, Harrison Sterling, who had remained silent the entire evening, slowly stood up. He walked over to Jude, his face a mask of cold, absolute fury, and delivered a backhanded slap so powerful it sent Jude crashing into the champagne tower. The crystal glasses came raining down, shattering over his body, soaking his expensive suit in sticky, sweet alcohol. "You worthless, ungrateful dog," Harrison hissed, his voice shaking with rage. "You ruined this family's reputation for a cheap whore. You abused the girl who gave her flesh for you. You are stripped of your position at the company. You are written out of my will. Get out of my house." Jude, please," Rosalie cried, trying to help him up from the pile of shattered glass. But Jude shoved her away, his eyes wild, his hands covered in blood from the broken crystal. He scrambled to his knees, crawling toward the mahogany pedestal, where my urn sat. "Sylvia," he choked out, his voice cracking as he reached out to touch the marble. "No, you're not dead. You're not. You're just angry. You're trying to punish me. Please, Sylvia, stop this. Call me. Just call me once." He grabbed his phone, his bloody fingers smearing the screen as he dialed my number over and over again. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Please check the number and try again." The mechanical, automated voice echoed through the quiet, ruined ballroom. Jude dropped the phone. He reached up, his trembling fingers wrapping around the silver chain of the crystal pendant. He pulled it close, staring at the tiny gray cells sealed inside the glass. Our baby, and the woman who had carried it. Both of them were gone. He had traded them for a woman who had pushed his pregnant wife down the stairs, a woman who had ruined my life's work 99 times, a woman who had looked at his family's wealth and seen nothing but a gold-plated ATM. "Sylvia." Jude let out a guttural, agonizing scream, pulling the urn into his chest, his forehead resting against the cold marble as he wept, his tears mixing with the blood and champagne on the floor. Rosalie stood a few feet away, her face pale, her perfect pink gown stained with red wine. She looked around the empty, ruined ballroom. The servers were quietly packing up the catering, the security guards were leaving, and Harrison and Eleanor Sterling had already walked out, ignoring their son's pathetic cries. She had won. She had finally gotten Jude all to herself. She had destroyed Sylvia Knight, removed her from the house, and taken her place as the future Mrs. Sterling. But as she looked at Jude, who was currently clutching an urn of ashes, screaming the name of a dead woman, she realized that she had won absolutely nothing. The Sterling Group was facing immediate, catastrophic bankruptcy as every major partner pulled their funding. The Sterling family had disowned Jude, leaving him penniless. And the man she had spent years manipulating was now completely, utterly insane, his mind shattered by a guilt so heavy it would drag him into the dirt for the rest of his days. "Jude," she whispered, taking a step back. "Jude, let's go. We can start over." "Get out," Jude whispered, his voice dangerously quiet. "What?" He slowly lifted his head, his eyes bloodshot, wild, and filled with a cold, murderous hatred that made her entire body freeze. He stood up, clutching the urn in one hand, a large piece of shattered glass in the other. "Get out of my sight, Rosalie," Jude hissed, taking a slow step toward her. "If I ever see your face again, I will make sure you suffer exactly what Sylvia suffered." Every single scream, every single tear. Rosalie let out a shriek of terror, turning on her heel and sprinting out of the ballroom, her expensive heels clicking loudly against the marble before she vanished into the night. Jude fell back to his knees, cradling the urn like a precious child. He had saved his childhood rival's eyes from the repulsive sight of my mangled limb. But now he would spend the rest of his life looking at the blood on his own hands, with nothing but a cold, marble urn to keep him warm at night. 2,000 miles away, the sound of the ocean was a gentle, rhythmic lullaby. The coastal air of New Zealand was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of salt and pine. The small, modern cottage sat on a cliff overlooking the gray-blue waters of the Pacific, far away from the stifling, toxic drama of the city I had left behind. I sat on the wooden deck, the morning sun warming my skin. A tall man in a white lab coat knelt in front of me, his hands gently adjusting the fit of a state-of-the-art bionic limb. Unlike the heavy, uncomfortable prosthetics Jude had forced me to wear, this one was made of lightweight titanium and soft, medical-grade silicone that conformed perfectly to my fully healed clean stump. There was no friction, no pain, only a gentle, supportive pressure. How does that feel, Miss Vance? The developer, a brilliant Swiss prosthetist named Marcus, asked with a warm smile. It feels like it's a part of me, I whispered, a tear of pure, overwhelming relief slipping down my cheek. That's because it was designed by a genius, Marcus chuckled, standing up and offering me his hand. The team at the Global Prosthetics Initiative is incredibly honored to have you as our lead designer, Sylvia. Your blue sky blueprints for the pediatric bionic joints have already been approved for clinical trials. You're going to change the lives of thousands of children. I took his hand and stood up. My new leg flexed perfectly, the advanced sensors matching my movements with a fluid, natural grace. I took a step forward, then another, walking to the edge of the deck without a single trace of pain, without a single shadow of fear. My phone, registered under my new legal name, Sylvia Vance, buzzed on the table. I picked it up. It was a news notification from my hometown. Sterling Group declares bankruptcy. Former heir Jude Sterling arrested for public disturbance and domestic abuse claims. The article featured a photo of Jude being dragged out of a local cemetery. He was gaunt, his hair matted, his eyes wild as he clutched a shattered white marble urn to his chest, screaming at the police officers that his wife was waiting for him. Beside him, Rosalie Shaw was shown being led away in handcuffs, finally charged with third-degree murder and reckless endangerment after the medical records of my miscarriage were leaked to the district attorney by an anonymous source. I stared at the screen for a long, quiet moment. The anger that had consumed me for years, the pain of the lost baby, the humiliation of the clown dance, the agony of the torn flesh, it all felt so distant now. It was like looking at a story written about someone else, a tragic character in a book I had long since finished reading. I tapped the screen, deleting the news app entirely. I turned my face to the sun, letting the cool ocean breeze wash over me. I took a deep breath, took another step forward into the soft, warm sand of my new yard and never looked back.